Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Dr. Melissa Spate Vaughn. I'm a member of Boston University's Center on the Ecology of Early Development, or CEED, and I will be moderating today's session. This webinar will be interpreted in Spanish and Russian. If you wish to hear the interpretation, please take a moment to find the globe on the bottom right section of your screen and select your language of choice. Today's webinar is about who is involved in Preschool for All, or PFA. We want to acknowledge that this webinar will be recorded. We hope that you will find this to be an informative and engaging session. Following the presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback. Please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A box throughout the presentation. Today's speakers are also joining us from CEED. Please welcome Dr. Stephanie Currington, CEED's Executive Director and a professor at Boston University, and Dr. Melissa Lucas, a researcher on the team. Now I will hand it over to them.
Thank you, Melissa. As Melissa mentioned, my name is Stephanie Currington, and I am CEED's Executive Director. But before we really dive into today's session, I'd like to spend a little time getting to know more about who's in the room today. So please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat by sharing your first name, your relationship to PFA, and what brought you here today. So if you could please just introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. Well, unfortunately, I can't see people's names, and there we go. There we go. So now I'm starting to see people. I see Melissa. I see Sarah and Robin. Thank you. I'm starting to see people now. Everyone's trickling in. Thank you. Thank you. So glad to have you all here with us. Nice. Nice. It's important for us to know your names, even though we can't see your faces. And it's really important to us to know that the chat is working because we have a fun activity that we like to do in the chat. It's called the waterfall activity. And it's a fun way to get to know a little bit more about our audience on a personal level. And so if you are interested and if you would like to participate, please feel free to share something about yourself or share something either big or small that you are looking forward to this year. But what I go ahead and start typing in the chat window, but wait until I say go before you hit send. Because what will happen is that everyone will hit send at once, and then we'll have a big waterfall of responses. And I feel like it's always sort of good. That's the response. The waterfall is like a good luck for these things that we want to happen to come true, in the new year. So everybody get ready and go. Hit send. Nice. I see a lot of spring flowers. I'm looking forward to that too. Oh, laughter. I would like some laughter too, Kim. Yes, Robin. Robin's going to open a preschool and meeting the children and families. Wow. Well, I'm wishing that all of these things, all these hopes that people are sharing for the future come true. And thank you for sharing a little bit about yourselves and your lives and some things you're looking forward to. So, as Melissa mentioned, we're here today from BU and CEED, and we wanted to just talk to you a little bit about how our organization, CEED, provides early childhood expertise for children and families living farther away from opportunity. And we have had the opportunity to partner with Multnomah County Preschool for All to evaluate the county's preschool program. Here are the members of our evaluation team, just so you can see their faces as a point of reference. This is everyone on our team. And this is our agenda for today. So first, we'll begin with an overview of Preschool for All and its CEED partnership, followed by a look at who are PFA children, educators, and providers. Then we will be focused on understanding PFA as a system and looking deeper into insights from various people, including the strengths and areas for growth that have been shared with us by PFA educators and providers. And finally, we will end with time to get feedback from community members during our question and answer panel with Denisa McLean, the new director of preschool and the new director of the Preschool Early Learning Division. So let me give you a little bit of background on PFA for anyone who might be unfamiliar. So PFA seeks to ensure that all 3 and 4-year-old children in Multnomah County have universal access to high quality preschool programs by 2030, especially those facing the greatest barriers to access. Um, it is a tuition-free program that is developmentally appropriate with a no suspension or expulsion policy. They're the first in the state to implement this policy, and it's designed to be culturally relevant and equitable. And PFA was also designed to gradually increase the number of children served so that by 2030 it is available for free to all interested families in Multnomah County. So in the first 5 years, priority is given to families who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, who have incomes at 350% of the federal poverty or less, and have children with developmental delays or disabilities, or who children who speak a primary language other than English at home. In the chart, you can see the revised goals of the number of seats PFA sought out to provide each year and the number of seats PFA actually provided to families. So over the years, PFA has exceeded their goals consistently. And as a note, in the next calendar year, 2026 and 2027, PFA expects to provide 7,000 seats, over 7,000 preschool seats. So another thing that I want to talk to you about before we get into, a lot of our key findings and is that I just want to bring up a note of caution to you because we will be sharing a lot of data and a lot of numbers and statistics with you. Some of the numbers we provide may differ slightly from those shared by the PFA program itself. And this is because we are using a point of reference in time that's based on a data set that PFA shared with us about their enrollment information at that particular point in time. The numbers may also be different because we collected the survey data actually during the last program year. So this is data from last year's survey, but don't worry. This year's survey is coming out in the spring, and I'm hoping that we'll get lots of responses and lots of participation. So now we're going to share some information about the CEED and PFA partnership and sort of that mission and intention behind our partnership. So there are 3 goals guiding our research practice partnership. The first one is to identify what works well and what can be improved in PFA to better support children, families, and early childhood educators in the county. Second is to make sure that racial equity and cultural responsiveness is a priority throughout PFA. And third, to evaluate how PFA is making a difference in the early learning and child care in the local community. And to identify these goals, we conducted 24 classroom observations at 13 different preschools in the spring of 2024. Each observation lasted about 15 minutes, and teachers led lessons or activities as usual, either with the whole class or small groups of children. We also collected data through surveys. So in 2025, this included 630 families, 308 educators, and 32 preschool site providers. So now that you know where our data comes from, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Melissa Lucas, who will go over the key findings from our data analysis and data collection.
Thank you, Stephanie. And hello, everyone. So before we continue, I would like to pose this quick poll for everyone. When you think about preschool for all, Who most shapes children's experiences? Classroom educators, families, providers, system, county policies, all of the above. I'll give a moment for everyone to answer via the poll. And Destiny, if you can please share the poll results on the screen for everyone. So it looks like a lot of people said classroom educators, but a few more actually said all of the above. So yes, all of the above, I think aligns a lot more with what we're seeing presented, and like what we know about education research is that the systems thinking is exactly what will, and this system thinking, sorry, is exactly what we will unpack today. Um, so, um, During our last webinar, we learned a lot about families' perspectives about preschool for all and the diverse needs of families and children across our PFA sites. And in order to meet these needs for families, PFA also recruited diverse educators and providers, as you will see in this table here. Of those, more than 40% of educators and providers identify as people of color, and about 20% speak Spanish. Educators also speak many languages other than English in their classrooms, like Spanish, Vietnamese, Arabic, American Sign Language, and French. Educators also have an average of about 11 years of experience, while providers average 18 years. And this really demonstrates their long-term dedication to serving children. And so the data here presented, as Stephanie mentioned, comes from our yearly survey data collected, just so everyone knows for moving forward. So, across all of our data sources, one strength really comes through clearly, and it's relationships. Families report feeling welcomed and that their site respects their cultural heritage. At the same time, educators emphasize connection and care when working with students and families. And we find classrooms are places where children feel emotionally supported. And this relational foundation is a major asset of Preschool for All. One Preschool for All family shared as part of an open response section of the survey how grateful they were about the program and all the help that they get in raising their daughter. Importantly, challenges are also shared. Educators, providers, and families point to staffing shortages and limited training as barriers, especially as classrooms serve children with diverse needs. These challenges show up across all the roles. We're hearing this voiced by educators and providers, along with some families noticing the challenges as well. All this tells us is that they are system level issues and not individual shortcomings. This is illustrated via one educator survey response that you'll see here to the right regarding how the system would benefit from a redistribution of needs and the staffing in classrooms. So, another poll for all of us here today. Which challenge feels most pressing in your context right now? Staffing shortages, student-teacher ratios, supporting children with disabilities, supporting multilingual learners, access to training and coaching. And I'll give another minute for responses to come in. And then you should have seen the poll pop up already on your screen. If we can see the results now. Thank you. Yeah, so we have a lot of mixed results here. And I think that's pretty in line with what we also found. So what's striking is that educators raised many of these same issues without even directly being prompted by us during our survey. So at one point in the survey, we asked participants to just share anything else that, maybe we hadn't covered already. And again, a lot of these same concerns were raised, pointing to the fact that these are real system level concerns that are occurring across our sites. So, digging deeper into areas of growth, we know that providers operate at the intersection of policy and practice. They manage staffing ratios, they support access to professional development, and they absorb the system pressures that exist. Many providers are navigating workforce shortages and limited pools of trained staff, which affects what's possible in the classroom. PFA is rapidly expanding access to 3 and 4-year-old children across Multnomah County. About 75% of providers who responded to our survey reported an increase among children with developmental delays and disabilities in classrooms, and 63% reported an increase in children enrolled who had not previously participated in childcare programs before. The increase in enrollment has certainly allowed PFA to reach those children who can benefit most from early learning opportunities. But several providers, about 38%, said that serving more children with developmental delays or disabilities has been a challenge. So, one provider shared that they had a good relationship with business partners and they had good relationships with PFA families, but they were struggling and overwhelmed with as they put it, number of children with high level of needs and the lack of support and structure that the site's inclusion team provided. So these issues are necessary to address as provider level constraints shape educator experiences, and ultimately this impacts children's learning environments. So in regard to educators, we know that educators are the link between system design and children's lived experience. They bring commitment and care to the families and children that they work with. Many shared feeling confident building relationships and supporting children's social emotional development. PFA educators are not just central to the daily experiences of children, but we see PFA educators as skilled in building relationships with diverse families and children and as fair and equitable. At the same time, educators report feeling less prepared to support children with disabilities or children from diverse language backgrounds, particularly when staffing is limited or when they don't have access to specialized training. And this gap between commitment and capacity is important to address. The graph shown here today depicts the types of structural training and supports that educators are receiving. So the highest levels of support that we see seem to be provided around trauma-informed teaching, literacy instruction, and ensuring no suspensions or expulsions. A positive finding is that educators reported having more support this year compared to last year. And most educators express a desire to remain in the profession. So given this trend, more educators will be equipped through training with the skills needed to support children with diverse needs. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So how are providers supporting professional development for educators? Some strengths that we see are that more than 90% of providers stated that they often, 1, encourage teachers to feel proud of their identities, 2, show a clear commitment to racial, ethnic, and cultural inclusion, and 3, they emphasize that equity is central to the school's work. These findings show that while most providers said they encourage teachers to feel proud of their identities and are committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, more consistent and sustained actions are still needed to translate these commitments into practice. Also, based on provider voices, we see that there are some areas of growth to tend to, such as providing training and allowing time for educators to understand, reflect, and talk about their identity, and training on equitable teaching practices. So, key takeaways. Looking across data sources, we see clear patterns. Strengths, like relationships, are shared across groups. Challenges, like staffing and training, are also shared. This alignment tells us that many of the issues educators face are not about effort or care. but about system conditions that shape what's possible. There are three main takeaways. First, that relationships are a major strength of PFA. Parents reported feeling welcomed at PFA, and their cultural heritage was valued, and that PFA cared about their children. Second, staffing levels and training access are critical for equity and inclusion. Staff noted that it was important that they receive training and professional development to support students with developmental delays or disabilities. Additionally, strengthening staffing support can help combat staff shortages experienced by PFA programs. And lastly, supporting educators and providers is essential for supporting children and families. These findings really reinforce the importance of system-level investment, such as through limiting student-teacher ratios and providing additional support through coaching models and professional learning that support inclusive practice. So Preschool for All works best when everyone involved is supported and connected. Children, families, educators, and providers, and system partners all contribute to this success. And so with that, I encourage you to share your thoughts and any questions you may have with our Q&A panelists who should be joining us shortly. And so we'll stop the recording now and I'll pass the floor back to Melissa.